Okay, confirmation if you see the slides.
Yes, sir. Now
You can see
visible.
the
Yes, sir.
slides, right? Perfect, perfect. Just a second. I need to make it full screen. अरे यार, just a second. Ah, okay. So got it. All right, students. So, introduction to medical parasitology. Okay, whatever you are seeing, this alien-like creatures. Okay, so they are actually Giardia lamblia. So they are the protozoans. Okay, so they are. I think they are intestinal protozoan. Can anyone say what is Giardia lamblia? What type of pathogen is it? Is it intestinal or is it tissues?
Sir, it is intestinal protozoan.
Intestinal protozoan. Is it flagellate or
Flagellate.
flagellate, right? Yeah, it is flagellate. So yes, Giardia lamblia is an intestinal flagellate. Very good. Yeah, Trichomonas vaginalis is the tissue flagellate. Correct, correct, correct. So this is Giardia lamblia. A very interesting parasite. Just like this, you will see under the microscope. Giardia lamblia looks like just like this. Really nice to see these parasites in the sample. Anyway, okay. Sure. Okay. So you know all of these things. Okay. You know the complete classification of parasites. You know. Then you know the types of parasites. You know endo, ecto, obligate, facultative, accidental, and aberrant. And you also know types of host, definitely intermediate and parenteric and reservoir host. Can anyone say reproduction happens in what type of host? Reproduction happens in sexual reproduction of parasites happens in
Definite,
Sir,
definitive host.
definitive host.
definitive host. Very good. And the growth will happens in the
Intermediate
intermediate
host.
host.
Intermediate.
Perfect. Very good, very good. So you are on the track. That is really great. Now I will discuss about the first unit. So the first unit is all about protozoan, students. So let me show you the syllabus here, then you will understand. Okay. Sorry, not first unit, the second unit. So in the second unit, you can able to see precisely classification of protozoans. So in the classification of protozoans, they have given Rhizopoda, which is Entamoeba histolytica, and Mastigophora. Okay, Mastigophora includes all flagellates. So typically, what they did is, typically, the protozoans are divided into two types, depending upon their morphology. The taxonomical, okay, according to the taxonomical classification, depending upon morphology, the protozoans are classified into two types. Okay, all protozoans are single cell eukaryotic microorganisms. Keep in mind. Okay, so these protozoans are typically divided into two types. One is shapeless organisms, and other one is they contain shape. A certain body symmetry is there for other organisms. Okay, shapeless protozoans are kept under a class called Rhizopoda. Rhizopoda will have shapeless organisms. Example for Rhizopoda will be amoeba. I hope you know that amoeba don't have any shape. It will change. It is just like a blob. It will change its shape frequently. So shapeless organisms are kept under Rhizopoda. So in the Rhizopoda, we have many types of subdivisions. We have many sub branches of this taxonomy. I won't discuss about all of those. Just keep in mind, all Rhizopoda will have shapeless amoebas. Simply, amoebas are a part of Rhizopoda class of protozoa family. Rhizopoda will have shapeless organisms. Simply amoebas. Amoebas will present in the Rhizopoda. And Mastigophora means Mastigophora will have certain body symmetry. Either they will have flagellates, they will have flagella, or they can have cilia, or they can even have a sporozoa. Can anyone give the example for sporozoa? Sporozoites. Coccidae. Okay. Coccidae are also called as sporozoites. Okay. Keep in mind. Coccidia are also called as sporozoites. Can you give example for Coccidia?
Sir,
Plasmodium vivax. Perfect.
vivax.
Very good. Plasmodium vivax. Very good. Actually,
Isospora belli.
Isospora belli. Plasmodium vivax. Perfect. Very good. I think Isospora belli is our intestinal, right? Intestinal Coccidia, right? I'm not sure. Intestinal Coccidia. Isospora belli. What is
Yes, sir.
isospora?
Yes, sir.
Intestinal.
Very good, very good. Yes, perfect. So that's it, students. The protozoans are typically or broadly classified into two types. I'm not going there. Very straightforward. We have shapeless organisms which are kept under the family called Rhizopoda, and we have shape-containing microorganisms that are kept under the family Mastigophora. Under the Mastigophora, we will have sub-branches like flagellates, ciliates, Coccidia, or sometimes Coccidia will are also called as sporozoites. Okay, sporozoites of Coccidia are same. So those includes Giardia lamblia, Leishmania donovani, and Trichomonas vaginalis. Here they have given Trichomonas hominis. Still, that is fine. Okay. Yeah. So that is the typical classification of protozoa. So let me show you the classification. Since you have very less time, I'm not going depth. Okay. Okay. Now I show you the complete spectrum of protozoans. So protozoans we have two types. One is shapeless. Shapeless, the best example is amoeba. So this is an amoeba. Then we have shape-containing microorganisms such as ciliate, flagellates, or sporozoites, or they are also called Coccidia. So this is the Plasmodium species. Other than this, we have one more classification, one more protozoans, but not pathologically they are not important. Okay, naturally they have one more which is called Epicomplexa. Epicomplexa classification, one family. Okay, Epicomplexa means they will looks like they are a combination of both amoeba and ciliates, flagellate. So we cannot say what is this. See, it has a stupid like flagellum, it has a stupid like cilia, it looking like a amoeba, and it has some spikes. So we cannot say it as a precise flagellate. I cannot say it as a ciliate. I cannot say it as a plasmodium, or I cannot even say it as a amoeba. So that kind of weird organisms are kept in epicomplexa. That means they're highly complicated. They're complicated. That's it. Okay. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 types of broad protozoans that we have according to the morphology. We have Rhizophora, then we have ciliates, and then we have Mastigophora. In the Mastigophora, we have ciliates, flagellates, and sporozoites or Coccidia. Now, listen, students. Our amoeba is a even about preparation. This is the problem. Rhizophora. Okay. Okay, amoeba is also called Rhizophora, right? Amoeba kept under Rhizophora. Now, listen, students. In the Rhizophora, we have many sub-branches. In the Rhizophora also, we have many sub-branches. But amoeba belongs to a particular subfamily called Sarcomastigophora. Amoeba belongs to a subfamily in the Rhizophora called Sarcomastigophora. So, or simply Sarcodina. There is a subfamily called Sarcodina. All amoebas present in this subfamily of Rhizopoda. Under Rhizopoda, we have a subfamily called Sarcodina. Under Sarcodina, all amoebas will present. All amoebas will present under the Sarcodina. That is why amoebas are also called as Sarcodines, or typically they belongs to the family Rhizopoda. So Rhizopoda, Sarcodina are both same only. Rhizopoda is a superior classification, superfamily. Under that superfamily, we have a family called Sarcodina. In this Sarcodina, we have our amoebas. And Mastigophora, the other things are in the Mastigophora. Okay, ciliates, flagellates, and Plasmodium and sporozoites or Coccidia present in the Mastigophora. Is this clear so far? Kindly write the notes when I'm telling. The only problem with parasitology is you will encounter new words. That is the only thing. Other than everything will be same thing. Is it clear, students?
Yes, sir.
Just tell me.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Amoeba belongs to what family? What super family?
Sarcopenia.
Okay, amoeba.
Rhizopoda.
Rhizopoda. Yes, yes.
Rhizopoda.
Very good. Perfect. So amoeba belongs to the superfamily Rhizopoda. Typically, amoeba belongs to a family called Sarcodina. So Sarcodines or Rhizopoda are same. And all other other parasites belong to the other protozoans belong to the
Mastigophora.
Mastigophora. In the very good.
Mastigophora.
In the Mastigophora, what are the three types? Tell me. Flagellates.
Flagellate, sporozoite, ciliate,
Yes.
ciliate,
And sporozoites or coccidias. Very good. Perfect. And forgot about this. This is epicomplex term, not clinically relevant, not clinically significant. Anyway, so this is the complete the types of protozoans under this protozoans. Okay. All right. Okay, so that's it. So this is a straightforward classification. As I said, protozoans, I just kept, usually we need to keep all these three in Mastigophora, but I just simply kept Sarcodina, okay? So in the Sarcodina, we have amoeba, then Sarcodina in the superfamily, there is a superfamily above Sarcodina called Rhizopoda. So in the Rhizopoda, we have Sarcodina, under Sarcodina, we have amoeba, then here we have Mastigophora, under Mastigophora, we have these three, flagellates, sporozoites and Infosura. Okay, flagellates, sporozoites and infisura. Infisura means, same words for sporozoites or coccidia. Coccidia are kept like inspora. Okay, just keep in mind. So examples for flagellates include Leishmania donovani, Giardia trichomonalis. Okay, flagellates. Then sporozoites include Plasmodium species, Toxoplasma gondii, Isospora belli. Then infosura include Balantidium coli. Okay, infosura. It is a subclassification of sporozoites. Anyway, keep in just be straightforward. Balantidium coli. So now you understand the importance of these words also. Sarcodina means definitely it will be amoeba. It can be either Sarcodina or Rhizopoda. All Rhizopoda and Sarcodina will have amoebas, and all Mastigophora will have the three types: flagellates, ciliates, and sporozoites. Okay, all right. The same thing. If I go depth, you will have many things. The subclass, family, superphylum, subfamily, superclass. I'm not going to discuss about classifications in this semester. Let it be straightforward. So you need not to worry about this classification. Cancel. But it will give a good depth knowledge on individual species. But fine, I'm just leaving it. Now let us focus on protozoans, especially the Rhizopoda. In the Rhizopoda, I will discuss in detail about the sarcodines. So sarcodine, the best example is amoeba. So see here in the in the Rhizopoda, in the Rhizopoda superfamily, we will have Sarcomastigophora. In the Sarcomastigophora, we have amoebas. Okay, Sarcodina. In the Sarcodina, we have the amoebas. Then in the Mastigophora, you will have ciliates, other things. Okay, don't get confused by seeing all this excessive data here. Okay, so just to see the beauty of this amoeba. Amoeba is one of the awe-wondering, surprising, and most interesting parasite to observe under the microscope, because it does not have shape. If you cut the amoeba, it will once again grow. There is no death for amoeba, sort of. And amoeba will move through by having podia, pseudopodias, a finger-like projections, but not true fingers. That is why the fingers are called as podia in medical terminology, but they are not true fingers. That is why they are called pseudopodia. So this amoeba will extend, it will divert the cytoplasm to the direction where it need to move, so that it will develop pseudopodias, and with the help of this pseudopodia, it will move across the environment, across the liquid environment. So see how beautiful it is. And the beauty of all parasites are, even though it is just a single cell organism, all parasites are eukaryotic in nature. Eukaryotic in nature means they will have a complete cellular organelles. They will have a definitive nucleus. They will have a complete cellular organelles. Everything in a single cell. All respiratory functions, excretory functions, digestive functions, metabolic functions, and all other hormonal functions, immune functions, everything happen in a single cell, which is breathtakingly complicated organisms. All types of functions that a complete organism will do, that a human like us, a multi-organism will do, will be performed by a single cell amoeba, which is really interesting. The marvel of evolution. Yes, it is the result of 4 billion years of constant development. That is why they are so complicated. Even the single cell, they have the architecture of 4 billion years of data. Something really fascinating to me. So anyway, this is an amoeba. Are you listening to me, students?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, all right. Um, mm, okay, so this is a amoeba, and I will show other organisms also. And there is a YouTube channel called Microcosmos. There is one particular photographer. He really likes in taking the photos of this microcosmos. Okay, he took the very nice videos of these microorganisms. Really interesting to see those videos. Just like us, just like the way we will have tiger hunters, deers, or snakes, like that, even in this microcosmos also they have hunters, they have parasites, a parasite on parasite, just like a real world, a really different world, alien world, an alien world of microcosmos. I will show you that particular image. Just see here. Yeah, this is one of the interesting thing. In this particular video, you can see all types of microorganisms. Here you can see a sarcodina. Here you can see a beautiful amoeba, and this amoeba was attacking. It was attacked by a predator, which is a ciliate. So a parapacium is feeding on the amoeba. See how dangerously. By seeing itself, I'm getting goosebumps. See the way it was eating the amoeba. Oh, what a predator. So this is a ciliate, right? Then you can also see here, there is a sporozoid that is attacking the ciliate. You can see a coccidia, a sporozoid attacking the ciliate. So everyone, the life is all about survival. It is all about feeding on someone, right? Yeah. Here you can see a sporozoid feeding on the ciliate. So here you can see 3 types actually. You can see an amoeba, you can see a ciliate, and you can also see a sporozoid or coccidia. So these are the 3 microorganisms we saw in this particular picture. And yeah, and we have a special guest here, and the special guest is the flagellate, which is the Giardia lamblia. So Giardia lamblia also not a good guy. Okay. Yeah. That's it. So this is all about the microorganisms. Okay, the classification of protozoans. We have sarcodina, amoeboids, and ciliates, sporozoids, and flagellates. Okay, so this is it. Let me come to the straightforward to your exam point of view. Let me start discussing about amoeba first. Okay, so let me take the marker here. Okay, so kindly start taking notes, students. So I will discuss about amoeba here. So, okay. So coming to the point, amoeba. AMOEBA, amoeba. To be precise, these are protozoans. I think I need not to discuss the same story always. We are discussing about protozoans. In the protozoans, I said we have 2 types. We have rhizophores. We have rhizophores and we have mastigophora. In the rhizophora, we have a subdivision called a sarcodine. In the sarcodine, we have amoeba. Okay, in the sarcodina we have amoeba. In this amoeba, I will discuss the pathologically important amoeba will be the Entamoeba histolytica. So now I will discuss about Entamoeba histolytica. EN, write the spelling. Entamoeba. ENTAMOEBA, Entamoeba histolytica, 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 Entamoeba histolytica. So let us see what is this Entamoeba histolytica. So now I'm going to discuss about Entamoeba histolytica in detail. So now I will start with the introduction of Entamoeba histolytica. Okay, so I will discuss about the introduction to Entamoeba histolytica. I hope this session is recording. Let me cross verify. Yes, it is recording. So everyone paying attention, right? Only 25 students, still fine. Okay, listening, right? Everyone paying attention, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let us see what is this Entamoeba histolytica. As the name suggests, can anyone say Intestines are also called as, what is the terminology for intestine? Medical terminology for intestine. Tell me. Intestine. Can anyone say study of digestive system? Study of digestive system is called as, do you have any guesses? Enteric tract. Have you heard about enteric tract? So intestine is also called
Yes,
as
sir.
enteric tract, okay? Enteric tract or enterology, okay? Enterology means the study of digestive system.
Entero.
Yes, entero. Entero means intestine. Very good, Akash. So enterology means study of intestinal tract or digestive system is called as enterology. That means here you can understand enter means something related to intestine. Entero means something related to intestine. That is why we have enter. Okay. Then amoeba. Amoeba means, okay, it is a amoeba. Amoeba which is present in the intestine. And what is this amoeba doing? It is doing something on tissues. Histo means tissues only, right? Will you agree? Tissues, right? Histo means
Yes,
tissue.
sir.
And what is the meaning of litica? Lysis. Lysis. Yes, that
Yes.
means
Break.
yes, breaking down the
Lysis
tissues.
breakdown, sir.
Yes, breakdowning of tissues. What type of tissue? Intestinal tissue. Which one break it down? By amoeba. Literally by the name itself, we can understand what type of disease it will create. We can understand that an amoeba will reside in the intestine and it will break down the intestine. That means it will break the tissues of the intestine. It will lyse the tissues of intestine, leading to generation of wounds, intestinal ulcers. Intestinal ulcers will be formed because of presence of Entamoeba histolytica. Because Entamoeba histolytica is feeding the intestinal walls. It is destroying the intestinal walls, resulting in the production of intestinal ulcers, and also it will destroy the mucus lining of the intestine. It will destroy the mucus lining of the intestine. If the mucus lining destroyed, what will happen? That mucus will be discharged in the stools. That means it will cause a diarrhea. When the intestine destroyed, the food cannot be absorbed into the body because the intestine was destroyed. The intestinal wall was destroyed. If intestinal wall destroyed, can the body absorb the food? The food cannot be absorbed. So all the food will release out. You will get a loose motions. Water cannot be reabsorbed. Food won't be digested. Everything will be excreted because of this because of the presence of this particular amoeba, because it is destroying the intestine. So basically the persons will get a dysentery. Okay, persons will get a motions, loose motions. Okay, they will get a dysentery. Dysentery means loose motion with mucus. Loose watery stool with mucus is called as dysentery, and this particular dysentery is called as amoebic dysentery. That means this Entamoeba histolytica will cause a severe diarrhea in the patient. Especially he will get amoebic dysentery. There will be high discharge of water in the stool and mucus. Diarrhea. The patient will get diarrhea. Patient will get amoebic dysentery. I forgot, students. I need to cross verify in the test. There is a difference between diarrhea and dysentery. If possible, can anyone Google for me? Can anyone say what is the difference between diarrhea and dysentery? Can you?
Diarrhea is a watery diarrhea and dysentery with mucus.
Very good. Yes. Thank you very much, Nita. Dysentery means in the dysentery we will get mucus in the stool, whereas in the diarrhea we will get watery stool. Watery stool is called as diarrhea, and mucus containing stool is called as dysentery. Amoebic dysentery. Usually our Entamoeba histolytica will produce amoebic dysentery in the patients. Okay. So now you can understand what type of disease our Entamoeba histolytica will cause. It will cause amoebic dysentery. Okay. Now the problem with dysentery is it's the problem much related to the loss of water, actually loss of water. Okay. When you have dysentery, what will happen? So water will be excreted from the body. So the patient will get dehydrated. Even though he is drinking water, the water will be excreted. So he will get dehydrated. Second one, he won't get nutrition. So he will become very weak. If he is not getting saline, if he is not getting a support, a saline support or external support, definitely patient will die. Patient will die within 7 days if you are not treating his dysentery. So amoebic dysentery and diarrhea, you should not underestimate motions, loose motions especially. Okay, patients will die due to hypovolemic shock because of excessive loss of fluids from the body. The blood will become too much thick, and the blood concentration, the blood volume will decrease, and that will lead to a condition called hypovolemic shock, and the patient will die. Amoebic shock, okay, hypovolemic amoebic shock, and patient will get amoebic dysentery, a severe loose motions. He will get peptide ulcers, he will get intestinal ulcers, he will have intestinal bleeding, he will have digestive problems, he cannot digest the food. Not only that, if you are not treating this amoeba, after destroying the intestine, amoeba will gain access into the blood circulation. If amoeba gain access to the blood circulation, means game over. What will happen is, now amoeba will start migrating to the liver, and it will start eating the liver, resulting in production of liver abscess. Then amoeba will gain access into your brain, and amoeba will start eating your brain, resulting in cerebral abscess. If you are not treating the amoeba, it will gain access into your heart, resulting in endocarditis. And that is a severe form of amoebic infection. If you are not treating, game over, multi-organ failure, and the patient, it is very challenging to recover the patient life. So that is the fatal sequences of amoebic infections. If you are not treating amoeba, it will gain access into the blood, game over, septicemia. The amoeba will start migrating into the body, it will destroy the liver, it will destroy the brain. You just imagine yourself, an amoeba feeding in your brain, a brain was eaten by a parasite. Just imagine how painful it is. The good thing is, brain does not have pain receptors, so you don't even recognize that something eating your brain. You will peacefully die. It's a silent killer. So amoebas are not a small deal. So this is all about some interesting things about amoeba. Are you listening, students?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So amoebas will cause amoebic dysentery. Now let us discuss about some history of this amoeba. Okay, let us discuss about some history about this Entamoeba histolytica. So first time, the scientist who first time identified that this Entamoeba will cause a loose motion. Amoebic dysentery is caused by Entamoeba histolytica. This was said by a good scientist, a good person. His name is Losch. Losch. Losch discovered this Entamoeba histolytica. Losch. Okay. You know in what year he discovered this? In 1875. In 1875, Losch is a scientist. He is the one who identified, and he is the one who correlated amoebic dysentery with Entamoeba histolytica. So his name is Losch. This is the brief history. Okay. So history include Losch discovered our Entamoeba histolytica in the year 1875. After that, let us discuss about geographical distribution. Geographical distribution means, where does this amoeba present? Is it only present in tropical countries? Is it present in subtropical countries? Is it present in polar regions? Is it present in what geography does the amoeba present? Believe it or not, amoeba present everywhere in the world. The geographical distribution of amoeba is worldwide. There is no area in the world where there is no amoeba. So geographical distribution, GEO, geographical distribution. So the second heading is geographical distribution. So geographical distribution of amoeba is worldwide. Okay, but mostly amoeba is mostly present in tropical and subtropical countries. Mostly it is prevalent in tropical and subtropical countries. Okay, it is mostly present in tropical and subtropical countries, but usually it is present worldwide. Okay, even in a desert, if you have some water, in that water you will find a amoeba. It is a very good at living in all types of environments. Amoeba only present in the water. If that is the case, how amoeba traveled up to desert? How is it possible to have an amoeba in the desert? That means we should able to understand that amoeba has some type of survival strategies to even stay alive even in desert environments. Maybe it has some type of strategy to even live without water. Without water, amoeba can stay, it can live. How is it possible? What type of survival strategy it has to survive without water, even though it is an aquatic creature? To survive without water, it adopted an evolutionary modifications to convert its body into a spore. It will develop a cyst, it will develop a protective covering on the outside the body, and this amoeba will entrap itself into a small capsule, and that capsule is called as cyst. And that is a protective way. If the amoeba become a cyst means you can imagine like a egg, okay, or a seed. If amoeba is in unfavorable conditions, if amoeba getting any torture conditions, if the temperature increased, if the pH increased, if any something which is not good for amoeba, it will immediately transform into something called cyst. And cyst, what is the advantage of cyst? Cyst cannot be destroyed. Cyst cannot easily destroyed by heat. Cyst won't be destroyed by pH. Cyst cannot be destroyed by high pH. Cyst cannot destroyed by high pH. Cyst cannot be destroyed by high pressures, PSI, okay, pascals. Cyst cannot be destroyed in high pressures. Cyst can survive in almost all types of environments. So this is the survival strategy of our amoeba. Okay, it will convert it to something called cyst, and cyst will be highly resistant phase of amoeba. Cyst is also called as dormant phase of amoeba. Okay, dormant phase means where amoeba will shut down its metabolism and it will sleep. The sleep phase of amoeba is called as dormant phase. In dormant phase, amoeba won't do anything, it just stay like that. Okay, so that is called cyst. And vegetative form of amoeba. Vegetative form means now this cyst landed into, for example, cyst landed into a water. Okay, cyst landed into a river. When the cyst landed into river, now this cyst will convert to amoeba again. It will convert to amoeba, an aquatic creature, and it will survive in the water. Then this particular phase, aquatic form of amoeba, okay, is called as tropozoite. The aquatic form of amoeba or the vegetative form of amoeba is called as tropozoite. Tropozoite. The vegetative form of amoeba is called as tropozoite. Tropozoite. So now I introduced two more important terms to you. One is cyst. Cyst means in unfavorable conditions, amoeba will convert to a protective stage called cyst stage. A protective stage called cyst stage. In cyst stage, we cannot destroy cyst. It will be resistant to heat, temperature, pressure, or any other harsh conditions. Okay, pH. So that is called cyst. Then the cyst will convert back to vegetative form, and that vegetative form of amoeba is called as tropozoite. So that is why we will interchangeably use the same words. You can say amoeba as amoeba, or you can also say amoeba as a tropozoite when it is in vegetative form. And during unfavorable condition, this amoeba will convert to cyst form. Okay, that is a resistant form of amoeba. Okay, is that clear for you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So yes. So far I discussed about introduction to Entamoeba histolytica. It will cause amoebic dysentery. Okay, the disease that is produced by Entamoeba histolytica is amoebic dysentery. DE something spelling. Okay, DESENTRY. Okay, dysentery. Yeah, so it will cause something called the amoebic dysentery or simply loose motions, and the loose motions will cause a dehydration and the patient will die. So that is why it is really need to keep an eye on the amoebic dysentery or Entamoeba histolytica. And Entamoeba histolytica, if you see the history, it was discovered by a scientist called Loch in 1875. And coming to the geographical distribution, Entamoeba histolytica present worldwide, especially it is more present, more prevalent in tropical regions and subtropical regions. Okay. It is more prevalent in tropical and subtropical regions. Then amoeba will convert it to two types of forms. One is a cyst form and other one is tropozoite form. In between this cyst and tropozoite, there is another form called pre-cyst stage. That means a tropozoite will convert back to cyst. Before converting to cyst, it will become a small bud-like creature. That is called precyst. Then after precyst, it will convert to cyst. So this is precyst. So these are the three stages of, we will see these three stages in amoeba, or three forms in amoeba. Amoeba will present in three morphological forms. It will present, usually it will present as a trophozoite, then it will convert to precyst, and it will convert to cyst. Trophozoite, precyst, cyst. So these are the three forms of amoeba. What are the three forms of amoeba? Trophozoites, cyst, precyst, cyst. Okay, trophozoite, precyst, cyst. So these are the three forms of amoeba. And I will also discuss one more thing, and I will move on to the morphology of amoeba. And the last and final is habitat. What is the natural habitat for our Entamoeba histolytica, especially? What is the habitat for Entamoeba histolytica? So the habitat, I mean, here in the virology we said target location, right? Target organ. Instead of saying target organ for in the parasitology, we will say it as a the location or habitat. Okay. Usually, our Entamoeba histolytica will present in mucosa and submucosa of large intestine. The habitat of Entamoeba histolytica is mucosa and submucosa of large intestine. Now, I want to tell one more important thing. Usually, we saw that parasites will have humans and other organisms, maybe a pig or other thing like that. What are the hosts for Entamoeba histolytica? There is only single host for Entamoeba histolytica, and that is only humans. So humans are the only host for both definitive and the intermediate host. There is no intermediate host for Entamoeba histolytica. Only one host, and that is only humans. That means always Entamoeba histolytica present in humans only, especially in the mucosa and submucosa of large intestine of the humans. Humans are the only host for Entamoeba histolytica. If you want to kill Entamoeba histolytica, there is only two approaches. Better kill the parasite or you kill the humans. Then you can remove this parasite from earth. You cannot kill humans, so all we can do is we can kill the parasite. Yeah. Okay. So yes. So Entamoeba histolytica has only one host, which is humans, and the habitat is mucosa and submucosa of the large intestine of humans.
Large intestine.
Of the humans. So is habitat clear for everyone? Until now, is everything
Yes,
clear for
sir.
everyone? Any confusion
Yes,
so
sir.
far?
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, very good.
Confusion.
Perfect. Okay, so let us discuss about morphology of Entamoeba histolytica. These are like the children topics. Okay, come on. Basics only, students.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Miss Tekla.
Can you
Fatima.
erase your board? Erase the board so that you start writing.
Yes, definitely. I will move on to next slide. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Mr. Navneet.
Sir, Entamoeba histolytica are normal flora or not, sir, of human?
Entamoeba histolytica. No, they are not normal flora. No. That is good question. Yeah, Entamoeba histolytica is not a normal flora. You have E. coli, but not Entamoeba histolytica. Yeah, they are not normal flora. Any more doubts? No, right?
No, sir.
Very good. And now tell me, students, do you remember what is the other name for trophozoite? What is the other name for trophozoite? I said
Vegetative.
form. Very good.
Form.
Vegetative.
Very good. See, I was really impressed. The other name for trophozoite can be vegetative form. And what will be the dormant form? What will be the dormant form? Cyst. Perfect. Okay. So, okay, the truth is I haven't prepared for this lecture. Anyway, this became my routine dialogue, so you won't even believe it. I'm checking the notes, just wait. Okay. Okay. So, okay, write down the morphology of Entamoeba histolytica. Okay. So now we are discussing about morphology of Entamoeba histolytica. Morphology. Okay, morphology. Okay, really challenging to write like this. Okay, morphology of Entamoeba histolytica. Tell me the three forms, students, quickly. What are the three forms of morphology? We have the Entamoeba histolytica has three forms.
Trophozoites, pre-cyst and cyst.
Cyst or
Perfect, perfect. We have trophozoite. Then we have pre-cyst. Kindly mute yourself, please, please. Cyst.
आज का भी बिजी था हमारा तो मजे क्लास ले ली हमने
So Master Shifu, need to open Master Shifu here. Okay, so coming to the point, trophozoite. Okay, so now I will discuss about trophozoite. Then we can discuss about the morphology of pre-cyst and cyst. So whenever I'm asking morphology, you need to draw these three diagrams actually. You need to draw trophozoite picture, trophozoite diagram, pre-cyst diagram and cyst diagram. Usually you need to draw trophozoite diagram only in the exams. Okay, pre-cyst and cyst are very easy to understand. So let us discuss about trophozoite morphology in detail. Shall we discuss? So now I will discuss about the
Yes,
morphology.
sir.
Yes, the morphology of the trophozoite. Okay, now let me draw the diagram. When I'm during my intermediate, my ma'am, our sir Ravi sir, he used to give only this question for exams. Okay, for class test, he will give only trophozoite. And even after giving this exam also, many students they won't draw the pictures properly. They won't draw the amoeba properly. And he used to say, I already given shapeless picture to you, but still you are having problem to draw. Yeah, he used to make fun on it. I didn't give any particular picture. I just give an amoeba, but that amoeba also you are spoiling. This is not good. Like that he used to say. Anyway, so amoeba you can draw in whatever you want. So let us see the morphology of a trophozoite. Okay. So first it will have a an ectoplasm. So first I'm drawing an ectoplasm. So you can draw in whatever shape you want. You can draw in the shape of Mona Lisa or any beautiful pictures. Okay, so this is an ectoplasm. Okay, so amoeba will have two membranes. So the outer membrane is called as ectoplasm. So the outer membrane is called as ectoplasm. ECTO. Ectoplasm. Ectoplasm. Okay. This is T, not X. ECTO. Okay. The outside membrane is called as ectoplasm, and it will also have a inside another membrane. Okay. And the inside membrane is called as endoplasm. The inside membrane is called as endoplasm. The inside membrane is called as endoplasm. So this is called as endoplasm. This is called endoplasm. Endoplasm. The inside membrane is called endoplasm. I didn't draw properly here. I mean the pseudopodia, but still fine. Maybe let us assume that this amoeba is trying to move in this direction. Maybe our amoeba trying to go here. Okay. Okay. So this is this finger-like projection. Okay. You just keep it elongated area like this. Okay. And that elongated finger-like projection is called as. Can anyone say elongated finger-like projection is called as? This elongated finger.
Pseudopod.
Pseudopodia. Very good. So this yes, it is called as pseudopodia. Okay. PSU. P silent. Okay. So P silent. Pseudopodia. PSU. Pseudopodia. Podia means fingers. Pseudopodia. So it has pseudopodia. Okay. Pseudopodia. Then let us see other parts. Then it will have a nucleus. Okay, a definitive nucleus will present, and only eukaryotic cells will have nucleolipod. Nucleoli present only to eukaryotic microorganisms. Since our amoeba is a eukaryotic microorganism, let us draw the nucleus first. So it has a nucleus, a very well defined nucleus it has. So this is the nucleus. Okay, nucleus. It has a nucleus. Then it will also have nucleoli. Inside the nucleus, it will have nucleoli. So it has even nucleoli. Very, very important. You must draw nucleoli. That represent that it has this one. Okay, it is a eukaryotic microorganism. It has a nucleoli. It has a nucleoli. Okay, it has nucleoli, and only eukaryotic microorganisms or eukaryotic organisms will have nuclear membrane. So nucleus will also have a nuclear membrane. Okay, these are the special features for eukaryotes. Keep in mind. So nuclear membrane is also present. Nuclear membrane is also present. So in the nucleus we have three parts. It has nucleus, nucleoli, and nuclear membrane. So these are the parts. Then our amoeba, whatever food it is eating, that will be kept under food vacuoles. Okay, for example, if it feeding on any food, okay, if it is feeding on any, for example, if it's feeding on a small paramecium, so it ate a small paramecium, and this paramecium food, okay, this paramecium will be kept inside a vacuoles, inside a pockets. So our amoeba will have a pockets, and those pockets are called as food vacuoles. The food will present inside these vacuoles. So they are called as food vacuoles. In this food vacuoles, it will have carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, everything. So in the food, it will have food vacuoles. So these are food vacuoles. Food vacuoles. It has food vacuoles. Okay, these are food vacuoles. Then it will have obviously a cytoplasm. Okay, then it will have cytoplasm. In the cytoplasm, it will have the other granules also present. So it will have a cytoplasm. This is all complete cytoplasm. Okay, so this is completely filled of cytoplasm. So this is cytoplasm. It has cytoplasm. And in this cytoplasm we will also see some lysozymal enzymes, lysozymal granules also present. Some type of granules will also present. Okay, some types of granules will present in the cytoplasm. We will see some granules. Okay, some lysozymal granules will be present, and not only granules. After eating this food, the food debris, after eating the food, after digesting the food, the debris will also be released into the cytoplasm only. Even food debris will present in the cytoplasm. So food debris is also present in cytoplasm. Food debris will present and some granules will present in the cytoplasm. So we will see some food debris also. We will see some food debris in the cytoplasm. We will see some food debris, that means excreted items will be seen in the cytoplasm. Food debris can be seen in cytoplasm. Okay, and that's it. So these are the major parts of the trophozoite. Okay, so now let us see. Okay, so that's it. Sometimes, let me tell one important thing here. Can anyone guess what will be the food for this Entamoeba histolytica? Can anyone guess the food for Entamoeba histolytica? Our Entamoeba, we will like chicken, right? We like chicken, mutton, or any non-veg. Similarly, our Entamoeba histolytica is really the favorite food for Entamoeba histolytica will be tissues, especially the intestinal tissues. And it is also interested in red blood cells and white blood cells. So it is red blood cells and white blood cells are it's a side dish. So our Entamoeba histolytica, in the food vacuoles we can see red blood cells, we can see white blood cells, and we can also see intestinal tissues. Intestinal tissues, red blood cells and white blood cells will present in the food vacuoles. So these are the three important diet it will feed on. It will feed on intestinal tissue, red blood cells and white blood cells. So all these red blood cells, white blood cells and intestinal tissues can be seen within the food vacuole of the trophozoite. Okay, And in the cytoplasm, you will see food debris, and the cytoplasm also will have certain granules, and it will have a nucleus. Nucleus will have a nucleoli, nuclear membrane, and it has two layers of cytoplasm. So one is outer membrane, which outer membrane is called ectoplasm, and inner membrane is called endoplasm, and it will develop a finger-like projections called pseudopodia. And the size of this tropozoite, is the complete size of this tropozoite is 10 to 40 micrometers. The complete length of this tropozoite will be 10 to 40 microns. 10 to 40 microns. 10 to 40 micrometers. This is the size of tropozoite. 10 to 40 micrometers. So this is the size of the tropozoite. A quick overview of morphology of tropozoite. So before morphology, I said that the Entamoeba histolytica has three forms: tropozoite form, pre-cyst form, and cyst form. Tropozoite, the morphology of tropozoite include it has an outer ectoplasm, inner endoplasm. It will develop finger-like projection called pseudopodia. In the cytoplasm, you will see food vacuoles. Especially in the food vacuoles, we will see red blood cells, white blood cells, and intestinal tissues. Then it will also have some food debris in the cytoplasm, and it has a nucleus. Nucleus has a nucleoli, and the nucleus has a nuclear membrane. So this is the morphology of tropozoite. Is this clear for everyone? Shall I move on?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Oh my goodness, there are many things to discuss.
It's very clear, sir.
Okay, thank you, Tekla. From 3 o'clock onwards, I have lab. Okay. Now listen, students, carefully. Now I will discuss about pre-cyst, morphology of pre-cyst. So the morphology of pre-cyst will be like this. Okay, it looks like a raindrop. Okay, it looks like a raindrop like this. So this is the morphology of pre-cyst. Now, as I said, it will have these things. Okay, let me tell some important features of pre-cyst here. The size of the pre-cyst will be, it will be reduced. The size of the pre-cyst will be 10 to 20 micrometers. The size of pre-cyst will be 10 to 20 micrometers. Okay, the size of pre-cyst will be 10 to micrometers, and it will have two important regions: a pointed blunt pseudopodia. It will have a blunt pseudopodia in one end. It will have a blunt pseudopodia. Okay, it will have a blunt pseudopodia. It has a blunt pseudopodia. Okay, so it has a blunt pseudopodia. Then it will have a nucleus. It will have a nucleus. Obviously, at one end, the nucleus will go to the periphery. Actually, the nucleus will migrate to the periphery of the tropozoite, and the nucleus will be at the periphery of the pre-cyst. Nucleus will be in the periphery of the pre-cyst, and it has a blunt pseudopodia. And in the pre-cyst, the food vacuoles disappears. Food vacuoles will be absent in pre-cyst because this food is it will consume all the food. To become a cyst, it will consume all the food. Okay, it will use this food to survive during the dormant phase. Okay, so in the pre-cyst, you will want to see food vacuoles. Okay, food vacuoles are absent. Food vacuoles are completely absent in pre-cyst. Food vacuoles are absent in pre-cyst. Okay, and it will become the overall shape of pre-cyst will become round to oval in shape. The shape of pre-cyst will be round to oval in shape. So the shape of pre-cyst will be either round, round to oval in shape. Okay, so these are the major features of pre-cyst. The shape is round to oval in shape. It will have a blunt end, blunt pseudopodia, and the nucleus will be in the periphery. The size of the precyst will be 10 to 20 microns, and food vacuoles will be absent in the precyst. Is this clear? This is all about precyst morphology. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now I will move on to the third form of Entamoeba histolytica, which is cyst phase. Okay, cystic form of cyst. Now let us discuss about cyst. CYST, cyst of Entamoeba histolytica. So this is the true cyst. Actually, I need to discuss much more things. Let me check here. Let me. Okay. Students, I know the information is excessive to you, but we don't have time. I will try to finish complete thing. Okay, pathogenesis and lab diagnosis also I will discuss in this lecture only. So I need your complete patience, because this is the only time. This is my final chance to pass you in the exam. So please be patient. Okay, don't scold me. Coming to the cyst. So let us see the shape of the cyst. The first and foremost thing that you need to know in the shape of cyst is the cyst will be very spherical in shape. It will be perfect round almost. So the cyst will be in perfect round. So cyst will be in perfect round. Okay. Okay. So the cyst is in perfect round shape. Okay. Now the shape is round. So it is round in shape. Okay. It is round. The shape is round for cyst, and the size of the cyst will be 10 to 15 micrometers. Sorry. So the size of the cyst will be 10 to 15 micrometers. So the size is 10 to 15 micrometers, and it is round. Now listen very clearly. The cyst will have the ectoplasm. Ectoplasm will be dried out. The ectoplasm of the cyst will be dried out, and the dried ectoplasm will make a refractile outer membrane. It will make a highly refractive outer membrane. A cyst will have highly refractive outer membrane. Okay, a cyst will have highly refractive, somewhat like this. Okay, somewhat roughy looking like highly refractive outer membrane. Okay, actually this is the dried out ectoplasm only. So it will have a highly refractive. That means it will be highly transparent in nature. Okay, so it will have a highly refractive outer membrane, and this outer membrane is called as cyst wall. This is called cyst wall. Cyst wall. Okay, it is called cyst wall, and it is highly refractive. It is highly refractive in nature. The outer membrane of cyst is called as cyst wall. Okay, then now inside the cyst we will see some important organelles. Kindly observe the organelles present inside the cyst. First of all, cyst will have a very good nucleus. So cyst will have a nucleus. No doubt, it will have a nucleus. Okay, this is the nucleus. Cyst will have a nucleus. The morphology of cyst is very important, students. Kindly pay attention. So cyst will have a nucleus, and it will have two important substances in the cytoplasm inside this cyst. Those two are chromatid bodies. It will have 2 to 4 chromatid bodies, a rod-like structure called chromatid bodies. It will have 2 to 4 chromatid bodies. It will have some chromatid bodies in this cytoplasm. So a rod-like structure is called chromatid bodies. It can have 2 to 4 chromatid bodies will present. Okay, so it has a 2 to 4 chromatid bodies. So they are called as chromatid bodies. CHRO, chromatid. CHROMATID, chromatid bodies. It has chromatid bodies. Okay, these are called chromatid bodies. Then it will also have the storage form of glucose, because now it will develop into babies. It will go for reproduction after cyst. If the environment is a favorable environment, if it exposed to a favorable environment, then this cyst will become a tropozoite, the baby tropozoites, okay? And for becoming this baby tropozoite, it needs nourishment. It needs some storage form of energy. Can anyone say storage form of glucose? What is the storage form of glucose? Do you have any idea?
Glycogen.
Glycogen. Perfect. It will have glycogen deposit in its cytoplasm. It will have glycogen deposit. Okay. It will have glycogen deposit. It will have glycogen deposit. It will have glycogen deposit. Okay, it will have glycogen deposits. Okay, so it will have glycogen deposits. So these are the major organelles of cyst. It will have a highly refractive outer membrane called a cystic wall. The shape is round, the size is 10 to 15 micrometers. Inside the nucleus, it will have a definitive nucleus with nucleoli, and it will have a glycogen deposits and chromatid bodies. Okay, it will have chromatid bodies and the glycogen deposit. Now, pay utmost attention. Let me take the other. Yeah. Now, just a second. Okay. So these are the three forms of entamoeba histolytica. A quick revision. Then I will go on to the another important thing. Just let me do a revision and I will move on. Okay. Oh my goodness. Charge. I'm running out of charge in my laptop. Okay. So the morphology, we have tropozoite morphology, pre-cyst morphology, and cystic morphology. So this is the propozoite, and this is pre-cyst. Pre-cyst, it has a blunt pseudopodia. Food vacuoles are absent in the pre-cyst. The size is 10 to 20 micrometers, and the nucleus is in the periphery, and the oral shape is a round oval. Yeah. Then in the cyst, you have highly refractive cyst wall. Then you have all the following things. Now, just imagine. The other thing is, after cyst, if the conditions are favoring, this cyst will become a baby. It will become into baby trophozoites. Now let us see how it will transform to baby trophozoites. Now just imagine here, I'm keeping the diagrams very straightforward, very simplistic diagrams. So this is a cyst. It has a nucleus. Okay. Now this nucleus will start dividing. So this nucleus will start dividing. Okay, in the cyst. Okay. Now this nucleus will become binucleated nucleus. Okay, even in binucleated nucleus, in this stage you will see chromatid bodies, but you won't see glycogen deposits. After this binucleus, this is called binucleated cyst. Okay, so that is binucleated cyst. After binucleated cyst, okay, so in binucleated cyst, both glycogen and chromatid bodies are present. Okay, both glycogen and chromatin bodies will present in the binucleated cyst. After this binucleated cyst, the nucleus will replicate. Simply the nucleus is replicating here. Now this binucleus will once again, this nucleus will split and this nucleus will split, resulting in formation of quadrinucleated cyst. This is called 4-nucleated. Okay, quadrinucleated cyst. In quadrinucleated cyst, the glycogen and chromatid cyst, the chromatid bodies will be disappeared. So in the quadrinucleated cyst, both glycogen and chromatid bodies will be disappear. Okay, both glycogen and chromatin bodies will be disappear. Then this quadrinucleated cyst once again replicates. The nucleus will once again replicate, resulting in formation of 8-nucleated cyst. Okay, 8-nucleated cyst. Now, when this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. When we have this 8 nucleus, okay. Now, this Okay. During quadruple test, the outer refractive membrane will be loose. The outer membrane will be ripped away, and that meta membrane is called as metacyst. Okay, it is called metacyst. So that this quadrinucleated cyst is called as metacyst. Okay, this quadrinucleated cyst is called metacyst. Then it will become a something called a 8 nucleated cyst. Okay, it will convert to 8 nucleated cyst. Now this 8 nucleated cyst will be ruptured. It will rupture. Okay, it will rupture, and each nucleus, it will become into baby trophozoites. It will become baby trophozoites. Okay, and these baby trophozoites are called as tropoblasts. These baby, how many trophoblasts we will get? We will get 80 trophoblasts actually. Okay, and these are called as tropoblasts. Tropoblasts. This is called tropoblasts. Tropoblasts.
Just like blastoma.
Yeah, blastoma, just like a just born baby. That before the zygote you have blastomas. Very good. So they are called as tropoblast, and this particular stage of Entamoeba histolytica is called as excistation. That means the cyst is removing. The cyst is removing and it becoming a baby trophozoites. That is why this particular stage is called as excistation. 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 Okay, this particular cycle of this Entamoeba histolytica is called as excistation. And when the trophozoite becoming a cyst, that means trophozoite will convert to precyst and precyst will convert to cyst. And these three stages are called as encystation. Encystation, that means it becoming a cyst. Encystation. So becoming a cyst is called as encystation phase, and the other phase is called as excistation. Okay, so other phase will be excistation. In excistation, it will remove, the cyst will come back to, it will become into trophozoites. Then these trophozoites will once again enter into, they may present in the fecal material or anywhere, and these trophozoites once again will initiate a new infection in another intestine. Usually, listen to me. When a person has amoeba, amoebic dysentery, he will release this amoeba stool into the outside. He will defecate, right? When he defecated, in the stool, the amoeba will convert to precyst to cyst. So after becoming cyst, when if had now this fecal material may contaminated in any river, or someone touched this stool material with some flies or anyhow. Okay, now this cyst will enter into the intestine, and in the intestine this cyst will convert to encystation. It will undergo encystation and it will release 8 amoebas, and these 8 amoebas will happily feed in our intestine. Happily it will feed, and it will once again it will become a trophozoite. The trophozoites will discharge in the patient will have loose motions. He will go on the floor, and definitely someone will touch the new loose motion, and they will get a cyst, and they will go once again the same process. So this is the life cycle of the Entamoeba histolytica. This is the complete life cycle of Entamoeba histolytica. I hope in the morphology itself I discussed the life cycle also. So these are the stages of life cycle in the Entamoeba histolytica. Okay. The concerning thing for me is I'm running out of charging in my laptop, students. What should I do? I didn't charger. Okay. Can I go down and can I come within 5 minutes? Will you stay online? Shall I do like that? Can I go down?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Meanwhile, just to do a revision, okay? Just to do a revision, or let me open my notes here. Let me keep my notes, then you will get some idea. The thing is, when I'm opening more PowerPoints, this laptop is struggling. I think we need some high-end gaming laptops for office work also. The Windows, after getting updates in the Windows, the OS become gigantic. OS has almost 8 GB OS itself. Where is my notes? Okay, this is one. Okay. Um, I'm sharing my PDF. Actually, I have already given you my written notes. In that written notes itself, you have parasitology. If you go through it, you will understand. In the virology notes itself, in the virology written notes itself, I have kept this parasitology. Okay. Yeah. So this is my parasitology notes. Sorry, why it's not turning? Got it. I hope you can able to see the PDF here in the display. See here. So yeah. So we discussed everything. So first I discussed about the history. I discussed about the geographical distribution. Okay. Then I discussed about trophozoite. This is the structure of trophozoite. Then we discussed about pre-cyst. Then we discussed about a cyst, and we discussed about the quadrinucleated everything. Then I discussed about the. Oh, good. Very good. I'm running out of my charging. I will go down. So this is the life cycle that I was talking about. So kindly see this life cycle. Kindly understand this. I will come within 5 minutes. So kindly understand this life cycle.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Are you there? Can you hear me? Only 17 students in this lecture. Too bad. Okay, let me do a very shortcut approach of teaching. Let us directly see in my notes, okay? Or as of your cat one, you need not to write any notes. Directly go through mine, okay? Go through my written notes. I already shared my textbook, that CP Pavesha Parasitology. Actually, that textbook is a reference copy. It is not yet published. I don't know whether it is available in Amazon or not. Anyway, I have provided you the soft copy. I simply take pictures of it. Anyway.
Same
Hmm.
thing.
I'm sorry, Akash, your
जो
voice
हमने
is
पढ़ा
breaking
अभी
now.
जो सर जी सर मैं कह रहा हूँ जो साइकिल है वो अभी अपने मतलब सेम ही तो है जो हमने पीछे पढ़ा था.
Yes. Whatever I'm writing, you just you can write the same thing, and I will also give textbook. If you are unable to understand my writing, then you can refer textbook also. Okay, this is for a rapid purpose. Okay, so let me discuss in this in my notes itself. So I think I have prepared this in 2016. Yes, Akash.
सर सेंड कर देना आज ये वाले नोट्स.
Definitely I will send this notes link also. Definitely I will. This is virology notes only. You may have virology written notes, this notes with you.
Yes.
In virology only,
Okay,
that's
sir.
it. I think page
Okay,
number
sir.
is 159. From 159, you will have parasitology in my notes. Kindly note this page number 159. Okay. So where are we? So I discussed about the introduction to entamoeba. Then we discussed about the morphology of entamoeba. We discussed the trophozoite stage, then we discussed about the pre-cyst stage, then we discussed about the cystic stage, then we discussed about the quadrinucleated. From 4 nucleus, the chromatid and glycogen will be disappeared, and in the 8 nucleus you won't see anything, and in the 8 nucleus it will ancestration will happen and it will have, that's it. Okay. Then let us discuss about culturing this one. Okay, let me finish the life cycle also. After life cycle, we can go through the laboratory diagnosis. So see here, life cycle. So Entamoeba histolytica passes its complete life cycle on only one host. Students, are you listening to me?
Yes, sir.
Following
Yes,
that?
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes.
Yes, sir.
Sadly, I have only 17 students, but I'm happy at least you are listening. You are the best. Okay, coming to the point. So the life cycle. So in the life cycle passes only in one host, right? As we discussed, the matured quadrinuclear cyst will infective form. Okay, the infective form of this will be the matured quadrinucleated cyst. Actually, cysts are highly infectious in nature because it is the cysts that are present in the stool or in the fecal material, and it is the fecal material which will be transmitted. So, infectious form of amoeba will be not the trophozoite form, but it will be the cysts only, because cysts are the one which will survive in the extreme conditions, right? So, in the cysts only we will have all of these. Oh, it's a good news. Great. Good. Okay. Life cycle. Highly infectious thing will be this all, students. Okay, the cystic form will be highly infectious. Okay, that's it. And this cyst can survive up to 10 days, and this cyst will be released in the water or in the food or in any contaminated. This cyst can present in the food or in the water. If someone eat this food, this water or food, definitely they will get the infection. The cyst will enter into the small intestine. From there it will go excistation. That means the 4 nucleated cyst will go to the 8 nucleated cyst, and 8 nucleated cyst will release the trophozoites, and the trophozoites will feed on the intestinal wall, and it will tear the intestinal wall. It will cause it will feed on the intestinal wall. It will cause it will release some type of proteolytic enzymes in the intestinal wall, and these proteolytic enzymes will destroy the intestinal wall, and it will cause ulcers in the intestine. Not only ulcers, these trophozoites will shed in the feces, the feces of the person, and in the feces it will once again go for excistation. Excistation means it will once again go for into a cyst form. So trophozoites will release in the feces, and in the feces it will go into excistation. So excistation happens. Excistation means the trophozoites in from 4 to okay, excistation will happen. So in the feces it will go to amoebas, and amoebas will once again go through the cycle. So this is the life cycle of Entamoeba histolytica. Very straightforward notes. Okay, I have given twice here. So that is all about the life cycle of Entamoeba histolytica. You can go through the notes and you can easily understand. So I was a little bit confused here. What exactly happens is, I need to go through the notes properly. Anyway, at one of the stage, I think amoebas will, in the intestine, it will go for excitation. No. After discharging out in the stool, it will become cyst. Okay. It will become cyst in the stool, and when it entered into the body, so we can keep our intestine here. So metacyst will present in our intestine. So in our intestine, it will become a amoeba, and it will nicely feed in our body, and it will once again after feeding in our body, this amoeba will go into the feces. It will discharge in the feces. At the same time, this amoeba will feed on our intestine, resulting in ulcers. After feeding in excreting in feces, these fecal tropocytes will once again go for encystation. That means they will go to procyst, cyst. In the cyst, we have mononucleated, binucleated, four nucleated, quadrinucleated, and this quadrinucleated may discharge in the feces, and this quadrinucleated will further go to the excistation. So this is the complete life cycle of the Entamoeba histolytica. The same story I have given in a elaborated manner here. Okay, whatever I wrote here, it is the same story, just like this diagram. So this is all about the life cycle of Entamoeba histolytica. Is that clear for everyone? Any doubts? I think it is very straightforward.
No, sir.
Yes.
Yeah.
No doubt.
No doubt. Very good. And I forgot about telling one important word here. These baby trophoblasts are also called as amoebules. These trophoblasts are also called as amoebules. How many amoebules it will release? It will release 8 amoebules. Okay, 8 amoebules will be released by the metacyst. From quadrinucleated cyst, we will get 8 amoebules. That is all about the life cycle of the Entamoeba histolytica. Then coming to the pathogenesis of Entamoeba histolytica. So the incubation time. So as we know, this Entamoeba histolytica will cause amoebic dysentery. That means mucus containing stool or motion, and this is happens. Okay, and the incubation period for Entamoeba histolytica is 1 to 4 weeks, and in this 1 to 4 weeks, it will cause ulcerative lesions in the mucosa, in the intestine mucosa, and it will cause amoebic dysentery. Then it will also cause something called extra-intestinal amoebiasis. As I said, after destroying the intestine, it will gain access into the blood. As I said, after gaining access into the blood, the first organ that it will reach is the liver. It will reach to the liver and it will start feeding on the liver. The amoeba will start feeding on the liver, resulting in formation of liver abscess. Liver abscess will get, and this particular stage is called as extra-intestinal amoebiasis. So extra-intestinal amoebiasis means presence of amoeba outside the intestine is called as extra-intestinal amoebiasis. In case of extra-intestinal amoebiasis, the amoeba will feed on the liver, resulting in hepatic amoebiasis, and after liver, this amoeba will start migrating into the systemic circulation. This amoeba will really reach into the blood circulation, and it will start destroying the other organs such as lungs, spleen, skin, and our this one, what is that, brain. All these organs will be fed by this amoeba. So these are the this is the pathogenesis of the amoeba, pathogenesis and clinical features of amoeba. So this is one question. So I have asked you a question on morphology of amoeba, and I asked you pathogenesis of amoeba, and I asked the life cycle of amoeba. So each question 5 marks. Morphology 5 marks, pathogenesis 5 marks. Pathogenesis means you need to write only this one. Okay, pathogenesis 5 marks. Then I asked a question on life cycle, that is 5 marks. Other than that, the next important topic will be lab diagnosis of Entamoeba histolytica. So this is another important 5-mark question for you. Lab diagnosis of Entamoeba histolytica. Before lab diagnosis, I should add a note on the culturing of amoeba. So culturing will be a part of our lab diagnosis. So let us have a quick
diagnosis.
Okay, let us see a quick overview of lab diagnosis, and we can say goodbye each other. And all the best for you, Cat 1 exam. So let us see about the lab diagnosis of amoeba, okay, and Entamoeba histolytica. So you are following, right, everyone? Is Tanu there? Tanu, Priyanka?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Okay. So kindly guide others. Okay. If someone asking questions, means you please help them, because we have many extra smart Einsteins in your class actually. They need not to stay in the classes. They know everything. That's the problem. Anyway. Mhm. 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 Only this much. This is not the thing I want. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So coming to the lab diagnosis, students, lab diagnosis is very simple. I think I think I can finish this lecture within 10 minutes. It is very simple. I thought lab diagnosis is more, but simple only. Okay, so kindly pay attention. Now I will discuss about lab diagnosis of Entamoeba histolytica. So the specimen of choice. So what is the specimen of choice for Entamoeba histolytica? It will be definitely stool, right? So the specimen can be a stool, a pus, because it will cause a skin abscess, because it is also targeting skin, right? So we can take pus, we can take stool, or we can even take hepatic abscess. Okay, we can go for a biopsy of the liver. In the biopsy, we will see the abscess, the wound to the liver, and that abscess can be taken. So even liver abscess can be taken. Okay, and why I said sputum? Why I said sputum here, students? What is the relationship between sputum and Entamoeba histolytica? Can anyone guess?
सर सर
Liver
एक्स्ट्रा वो
ingestion.
था ना अभी एक्स्ट्रा
Perfect. Very good. Very good. In extra-intestinal
Ingestion.
amoebiasis, very good. In extra-intestinal amoebiasis,
एक्स्ट्रा
it is attacking
इंटेस्टिनल
lungs. Yeah, when it is
लंग्स
attacking lungs, the expectorate, okay, the expectorate will be the sputum. So sputum will be the best choice if in case of extra-intestinal amoebiasis. So these are the sample of choice for detection of Entamoeba histolytica. It can be a stool, pus, hepatic abscess, or sputum, right? Then how to examine this stool? Now, this stool examination will be done in two important things, okay? Direct examination, and other one will be culturing of the Entamoeba histolytica. All parasites we will do like this. We will go for direct examination, and we will also culture the parasites, okay? So direct examination is very straightforward. We will do something called mounting technique, saline mount, a wet saline mount. So all you need to do is you take the stool sample, suspend it in a drop of saline mount, and you will have a specialized slide, glass slide. It will have a well, a concave slide. Okay, in that concave slide, keep a drop of saline and add a loop full of stool to it, and keep a cover slip and observe under the microscope. If you see tropozoites, that's it. Positive for amoebic dysentery. Okay, so usually you will see either cysts or tropozoites in the saline mount. Okay, take a glass slide, add a drop of saline, add a drop of stool, keep cover slip and observe under microscope. You can see any one of these. Either you will see tropozoites or you will see cysts with bar bodies inside them. Okay, bar bodies means our this one. What are the chromatid bodies? Okay, chromatid bodies can be seen, or you will see refractile bars can be seen. You will see both cysts and trophozoites in the saline mount. So this is one direct examination. Then second approach will be okay. In the direct examination, we will do two types of things. Kindly listen to me. Let me check here. Okay. Okay. Listen to me very carefully. We have two types of direct examination. Okay. We have two types of direct examination. One will be wet mount and other one will be flotation techniques. One is wet mount. Okay, wet mount is for detection of tropozoites or any cysts. Usually we will see only basics in wet mount. Okay, but we cannot see cysts actually. Cyst will be very challenging to visualize in a wet mount. But It is the cysts that are highly infectious. Detection of cysts is more important, right? Now, if we want to detect the cyst, that cyst can be detected by flotation techniques. We have a special modified techniques to visualize or to see the cysts. Cysts can be visualized by flotation technique. As the name suggests, flotation means the cyst will float in the water. You will take a test tube and you will add some solutions. Upon adding these solutions, all the cysts, all the eggs will float on the surface of water. When they are floating on the surface of water, I mean in the test tube, all you need to do is you just touch with the slide. You just keep slide on the top of glass test tube. So all the eggs will attach to the glass slide. That means all eggs are floated on the surface of glass, on the surface of test tube. And such technique is called as flotation techniques. Flotation technique will be very useful to float all types of parasite eggs. Parasite eggs can be floated by suspending them in a specialized solutions. And that method is called as flotation. Flotation is for floating parasitic eggs. Parasitic eggs will be floated by a technique called flotation techniques. Now let us see what type of flotation technique we required in order to float the trophozoite cysts. What type of flotation technique we require to float the trophozoite cysts. So now let us see here. Okay. We have a technique called formal ether concentration technique. It is a type of flotation technique. We have something called formal ether concentration technique. And this formal ether concentration technique is very helpful for floating all types of parasitic eggs. It can be helminthic eggs or it can be protozoan cysts. Both protozoan cysts and parasitic helminthic eggs can be floated by using this formal ether concentration technique. Now, let me tell one of my personal experience with this particular test in my BSc. Yes, it is my awkward moment, but still it is worth to share with you because you should not do the mistake that I have done in my lab. Okay. Now listen to me, students. Are you listening?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
When I'm doing my
Yes,
flotation technique, when I'm doing my flotation technique, I don't know this will happen. Even my instructor, she said that don't keep your face too much closer when you're adding so and so chemicals. So what happened? I took the test tube, I added some chemicals, then I added formal ether. So before adding formal ether, first I will take saline solution, something, and I will add stool sample. Literally we took stool sample, literally a motion stool sample we took, because my BSc I done in a government college, so we have a real patients, so we need not to go for okay, the other things. So we really took the patient sample. I take this test tube, I added a stool sample, really smelly, amoebic stool, it will be really bad smell. Anyway, I took it, I added the stool saline, then I added the formal ether to my test tube. After adding formal ether, the procedure is, with the help of gloves, you need to close the lid of the test tube. You need to close the top of the test tube like this. She said that hold with a thumb tightly after adding formal ether to the solution. I thought it is a simple thing, you know. I didn't expect this phenomenon actually. So I hold it normally. Then I felt like a gas formation in the test tube. I felt like there is some gas in the test tube. You know, there is a pressure in my thumb. I didn't expect this will happen. So I experienced the pressure and I just removed my thumb and all the fluid fall on my face. You can understand the problem here. The conclusion is, in the flotation techniques, the water will become like soda. So just like a Coke tin, your test tube will become a temporary Coke tin. Okay, Coke. If you suddenly remove your thumb, game over. The Coke will spill on your face. Here it is not Coke, it is stool. So don't do such mistakes. Okay. Thankfully I have mask, but it won't give that much protection. Anyway, so the conclusion is handle parasitic the flotation liquids and the reagents carefully when you are experimenting. They are highly volatile, especially the flotation liquids will cause gas formation. Because of this gas only, all the cysts are floating on the top of this test tube. So handle with care when you are working with parasitic experiments. That is why we concluded to remove parasitology tests in your semester. So we included that in the MLT subject itself, and there is no dedicated parasitology lab for you. Only for these problems, you will do many mistakes and you may get infected, self-infected. Anyway, so let us see what we are adding in this particular flotation technique. So what we need to do is, we will take 1 to 2 grams of feces and we will mix it in a water. Okay, we will take a test tube, and in that test tube we will add 2 grams of stool, and we will add some 10 ml of distilled water. So after adding distilled water, we will centrifuge it for 2 minutes. After centrifuging, we will sediment is suspended. Okay, we will discard the supernatant and we will take the sediment. This sediment will be once again in this sediment. Once again we will add 7 ml of formal saline. Once again we will add saline, and we will centrifuge again for 10 minutes. After centrifuging, now I will add ether. After adding ether, okay, after adding ether, add 3 ml of ether, then once again centrifuge, then take the sediment. Okay, in this step only the problem will come. After adding ether, if you are not holding the test tube properly, the water will spill on your face. So handle with care when you are handling ether solution. Okay, immediately after adding ether, the gas will form in the test tube. So careful when you are adding ether. Okay, so after adding ether, centrifuge it again, then collect the sediment and make a smear on a glass slide with this sediment and observe under the microscope. You can happily see the cysts in the microscope. So this is the flotation technique. Okay, and this is called formal ether concentration technique. So in case of formal ether concentration technique, we will suspend the stool in a distilled water, 10 ml distilled water, then we will centrifuge it, then we will take the sediment and we will once again suspend in saline water, then once again centrifuge, then we will sediment, once again we will take the sediment and we will once again do it in 7 ml. So 10 ml, 10 ml, 7 ml. Then in the third time you will add 3 ml ether, and you will observe under the after centrifugation you will prepare a smear and you will observe under the microscope. So this is a formal ether concentration technique. Okay, I think this is not flotation technique. Anyway, just remember this is called a formal ether concentration technique for identifying cysts and eggs of the the eggs. Okay, so we have direct techniques. In the direct techniques, we have 2 types: saline wet mount, and second one is concentration technique. Saline wet mount, we will use saline wet mount to see the trophozoites and cysts of the parasite, and concentration technique is for especially for detection of trophozoite cysts. So cysts can be detected in the formal ether concentration techniques. This is it. Then the second one is in the lab diagnosis we will do culturing. For culturing, we have 2 types of cultures to grow the Entamoeba histolytica. So the 2 cultures are polyaxonic culture media. One is polyaxonic culture media and second one is diamond culture media. Diamond is internationally standardized media that is routinely used for culturing our Entamoeba histolytica species. Entamoeba histolytica species will be usually cultured in diamond media. Now let us see what are the ingredients of this diamond media. So let us discuss about diamond media and we can say goodbye each other. Yeah, so as I said, we have 2 types of culture media. One is polyaxonic culture media and other one is diamond media. Okay, since the scientist name is diamond, so that is why it is called diamond media. So let us see what is polyaxonic culture media. So in polyaxonic culture media, this media contains bacteria, serum and bacteria flora. Okay, because our Entamoeba histolytica likes bacteria a lot. So we will add bacteria and human serum. Okay, egg serum will be added. And this egg serum is also called LOX solution. Okay, so Okay, so in this polyaxonic culture media, we can grow Entamoeba histolytica, Balantidium, and okay. Other than polyaxonic culture media, we have two other media which are Balasmus media and Nelson's media. So in these three media, we can able to culture Entamoeba histolytica, and internationally we have a routinely used culture media is a diamond culture media. So diamond culture media is used for this Entamoeba histolytica. So diamond media will have diamond media won't have bacteria. So we will culture Entamoeba histolytica in the absence of bacteria. That is the only difference between polyaxonic culture media and diamond media. In diamond media, we won't have any bacteria. And also,
Bacteria.
okay, other than bacteria, we will have something called axonic culture media is used for pathogens and drug test. That's it. In the diamond media, we won't have bacteria in it. That's it. So this is all about culturing of Entamoeba histolytica and lab diagnosis of Entamoeba histolytica. I'm really sorry, students. I was misguided you. Concentration technique is different from flotation technique. I was confused with flotation technique. Whatever I said here is a concentration technique only. In the direct method, we have two types. One is wet mount and other one is concentration technique for Entamoeba histolytica. Other than concentration technique, we have one more technique called flotation technique. Flotation, I think we will discuss in Giardia lamblia. I confused between Giardia lamblia and Entamoeba. Anyway, so this is all about Entamoeba histolytica. I will do a quick revision from the beginning onwards. Okay. So broadly, our parasites, our protozoans are divided into two groups, Rhizopoda and Mastigophora. In the Rhizopoda, especially we have subfamily called the Sarcodina.
Sarcodia.
Yes, in the Sarcodina we have amoebas, whereas in the Mastigophora we have ciliates, flagellates, and the sporozoites and coccidia. All right. Then we discussed about the Entamoeba histolytica. Entamoeba histolytica belongs to the Sarcodina. It will cause amoebic dysentery. It was discovered first time by Lodge in 1875. Geographical distribution, it present everywhere. Especially it is mostly prevalent in tropical and subtropical regions. Habitat is mucosa and submucosa of humans, of the large intestine of man. And morphology, it has three forms: trophozoite stage, cyst stage, and the precystic stage. Trophozoite, we discussed about the morphology, the very boring thing, you already know. Then we have pre-cyst form and cyst form, and in the cyst form, it will have a highly refractive cyst wall, and the nucleus will start replicating. It will become binucleated cyst, then it will become quadrinucleated cyst. In the quadrinucleated cyst, the chromatic bodies and glycogen deposits will be gone. Then after that, slowly it will start ancestation. So then you have the life cycle. So the life cycle, this is the life cycle. So the trophozoite will convert to procyst. Procyst will convert to it will slowly become a cyst, and this particular stage is called ancestation. After becoming quadruple cyst, this quadruple cyst may release in the fecal materials, and in the feces it will become eight cyst. Okay. Then amoebules will be released, and these amoebules may present in the intestine, resulting in ulcers formation, or these amoebules will release in the feces, and it will go once again. So this is the life cycle of the Entamoeba histolytica, and the incubation period is 1 to 4 weeks, and they can survive in the stool for almost 10 days. Okay, and then I discussed about the pathogenesis. So in the pathogenesis, we have two important stages: intestinal amoebiasis and extraintestinal amoebiasis. In the intestinal amoebiasis, you will see ulcers in the intestine and you will see dysentery. And in the extraintestinal, you will see hepatic abscess, liver abscess, lung abscess, and brain abscess and skin abscess. And that's it. And in the lab diagnosis, you have direct examination and indirect. Direct include wet mount, and other one is this one, concentration technique. Okay, I think I have given a nice picture here. So I added a concentration technique. Take a test tube, add 1.2 gram of stool, 10 ml of distilled water, centrifuge it, then once again suspend, take the sediment, add 10 ml of distilled water. Yeah. Usually you are concentrating it. Okay, so that's it. That is all about this. And we have two important medias to culture our Entamoeba histolytica. One is polyaxonic culture media, and other one is the diamond media. In the polyaxonic culture media, it will have bacteria, whereas in the diamond media, bacteria is absent. That's it. That is the only difference. I think we successfully completed one parasite in detail within a straightforward lecture. Any more doubts in Entamoeba histolytica? This is for your Cat 1 exam. This is the syllabus for Cat 1. Is that clear? Do you need any clarifications in this topic? I hope not. Is everyone here? Are you listening, students?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I think another Vanshika, she left. All right. So thank you very much, students. Can I end this session?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you
Sure,
very
sir.
much. Yeah, I will share my written notes with you once again. Please download it. I think it is about different one.
Sir, may you share us?
I will share the notes with you immediately. Right now, I will
Sir,
share the notes.
सर
Yes,
फॉर्मेट
Akash.
भी एक बार सेंड कर देना सर, फॉर्मेट भी सेंड कर देना एक बार क्वेश्चन पेपर का।
Question paper का sure, sure. I will. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, students.
थैंक यू सर।
Yes,
Thank
you
you,
can.
sir.
Yes.
थैंक यू सर।